Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Good afternoon and welcome to WCAT Radio and this edition of Inter Vitam et Mortem, Between Life and Death, Interviews and Discussion with a Catholic Bioethicist. I am your host, Dr. Anne Urlakis. I am a classically trained and degreed bioethicist, and today I have with me a very special guest right here with me in my own home, Miss Abby Zignego, whom I wish to introduce to our listeners. Before we begin, let's start as we always do with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear God, our Heavenly Creator, you are the author of life and of truth, the reality that you will each and every human person into being, created from the moment of conception, bearing the dignity and imprint of your own image and likeness within our very essence of our being, is a mystery beyond human understanding. Please help us to have a greater appreciation of the gift of being created in your image and likeness. Help us to reverence that reality in our brothers and sisters, especially in the tiniest and most vulnerable among them. And help us to defend the sanctity of every human life from conception to natural death. We ask this through the intercession of Our Lady, the ever-pure and all-immaculate Blessed Virgin Mary, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Again, thank you for tuning in to this episode of WCAT Radio's Inter Vitam et Mortem, Between Life and Death, discussion and interviews with a Catholic bioethicist. I am delighted and honored to have as my guest today, Mrs. Abby Zignego. Abby?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yes. My husband, Matt, and I have been married for 12 years, and we have 7 beautiful children. Our oldest is John, and he's 11, and our youngest is Sophia, and she just turned 1.
I've known your family for several years now, and you have a beautiful, beautiful family. And one of the things that has impressed me about your family is the love that you have for each other and the ability to face challenges and your 100% pro-life, your commitment to the sanctity of life. My perceptions of your family began long before you were joined by a very special young lady. And over the years, watching your family grow and watching the care and devotion that you have, especially with one very, very special member of your family, has truly impressed me. And that's why I invited you to be on this program today. Could you tell us a little bit about Isabella?
Isabella is our 6th child, and she was born with Spina Bifida. We found out about her Spina Bifida at my 20-week ultrasound. It was a complete shock to us. We don't have anyone in our family with Spina Bifida or, anything else like that. And it was very scary at first. Nobody goes into their ultrasound expecting to hear a diagnosis of anything. You think everything's going to be good. Maybe you're going to find out the gender of your baby, maybe not, but you're going to get a peek and everything's going to be fine. And we found out that she was going to be born with Spina Bifida. And it was scary, but we loved her right away, and we knew that, of course, we wanted to keep her, and we were going to do everything we could to give her the best life possible.
I remember seeing you shortly after you had the diagnosis, and just the support that you welcomed. You asked for prayers right away, and prayers came pouring in. the love that you have had for that child from the moment that she was in your womb, and the courage that you faced this challenge with. I remember seeing you with your other children, overwhelmed would be any one of the rest of us, with each of them needing your attention, and yet the beauty of this family and seeing how God supported you from the beginning. Can you speak to that?
Yes, my very first story, even before we found out that she had spina bifida, we had picked godparents for that baby. We didn't know, at the time if she was a boy or a girl. And we had picked my husband's sister and her husband. And her husband happens to be a neurosurgeon. And we asked them 3 days before my ultrasound if they would be godparents. We were planning on waiting until we saw them in person, but at the time they lived out of state. Matt's sister had randomly called him about something else, and he's on the phone, and I whispered, just ask her. And so he asked them to be godparents over the phone, and they, of course, said yes. And so then 3 days later, we're at my ultrasound, and we find out that our baby has this, birth defect where she's going to need a lot of care from a neurosurgeon. Right. And it was the first sign of divine providence with Isabella, that even before we knew she was going to have this huge challenge, that God was watching over her and watching over our family. Wow. And he had picked these godparents for her. And then, when we got the diagnosis, we both come from big Catholic families, and we have great Catholic friends. So just the amount of people praying for us and praying for her was amazing, because there's a fetal surgery that they can sometimes do on kids with spina bifida where they go into the mother's womb and they can repair the back. And it's very, very risky. It's not for everybody. Some people want it and get denied. Some people just don't even want to take the risk and don't look into it. And it was something that we felt we needed to look into because we didn't want to look back and regret not having done everything that we could for her. So we were denied here because I had 2 preemies before, and so they didn't want to risk any preterm labor with her. So we went for a second opinion at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And so we went there. They have to do the fetal surgery by, I think, 24 or 25 weeks. So we had a very, very short time frame to look into this. And John was going to make his first communion that weekend, and we went, and I didn't know if we were coming back. I didn't know if we'd miss his first communion. I didn't know if I'd be in surgery in 3 days. We didn't know what was going on. But we got several different people to watch the kids at home, get them to and from school, take the little kids that weren't in school yet, made sure everybody was set. And we went, and we didn't end up qualifying for the surgery because Isabella's hydrocephalus in her brain was already too advanced for her to benefit from the surgery. So, and we were at peace with that. Everyone was afraid that we would be disappointed, but we were at peace with it because we felt, again, that God would lead us in the right direction. And we were trying to do what was best for her. And if this wasn't what was best for her, then we didn't want to do it, And part of me was very relieved because it is very risky for both mom and the baby. And so if you have the surgery, then you're on bed rest until you deliver. So that would have been very hard for our family too. With the other children. So that was a relief, but it was something, we felt we had to go and check out. And knowing that there were so many people praying and willing to help us, it made the whole process a lot easier to go through everything.
So fast forward, you've gotten to delivery, and you have this gorgeous little girl. And what are you feeling at delivery? I think Matt too, we were both very nervous. Her labor was induced, and it had to be very slow because her heart rate kept dropping, and so they had to stop labor
for about an hour and a half to give her a break.
Sure.
So the whole thing was just stressful and anxious because we just wanted what was best for her, and so then she was born, and we were just nervous because we didn't know what her back was going to look like.
Right.
We didn't know, they can give you how big they think the opening is going to be, but nobody really knows until she's born. And so I did not get to see her right away. They took her right away, and they wrapped her up. And so Matt was able to watch them work on her. And we had told them that before they took her away, as soon as possible, Matt was going to baptize her.
Mm-hmm.
We had asked our priest, what should we do? Should we call you when she's born to come baptize her? Should one of us baptize her? Should we wait? And he said, you know what? She's going to need her back closed soon.
Right.
We don't know when that's going to be. It could be, 12 hours after birth. It could be 48 hours. He said, you're going to want her baptized before that. And he said, just do it. One of you, just do it. And so Matt baptized her right after she was born. The doctors were all there. They were working on her. They took a break for a minute, let him baptize her, and then got back to it all. And then, so we knew she was stable. And then they brought her to me. I got to give her a kiss, and then they took her off to the NICU.
Wow.
So
lots of emotions
Yes.
there. Lots of emotions. And beautifully starting sacramentally with your husband and you right there at the beginning. So her sacramental life started from, one of her, her first hours. She was welcome into the family of Christ right from the beginning. And all the graces that brought with for her and for you. So how long was it before she ended up going into her first surgery?
She went into her first surgery. She was less than 24 hours old. She was born Sunday evening at about 10:30, and she went into surgery Monday afternoon. They had come and told me that she was on the waiting list for an open OR, and they would take her when they had time, but they didn't think it was going to be Monday. They thought it would be Tuesday, and that was hard because she couldn't eat until after she had surgery. So, you want to have your baby, you want to feed them, and you want to hold them and snuggle them, and that wasn't anything I was able to do with her at first. But then about 30 minutes after they told me they weren't going to get to her, the neuro team came and said, we're taking her to the OR now. We had a cancellation and we can fit her in. So Matt was home with other kids, I think, and so I called them and I said, she's going into surgery now, you have to come. And so they took her that first day, and it took a couple hours, and they closed up her back, and everything was good. Her first surgery went very well.
First surgery.
First surgery.
First surgery.
Yeah.
First of how many?
10. She's had 10 so far.
And how old is she?
She's 3.
She is 3. So she has gone through 10 surgeries.
Yes.
Like a trooper.
Yes.
And, any parent going through one surgery with a child, the emotional roller coaster, the exhaustion, the dealing with the other kids, and your family has gone through 10 surgeries in 3 years with this amazing young lady. Tell me about some of the other ups and downs, some of the other surgeries.
So after she had that initial surgery, they had to watch her brain very carefully to see, because with Spina Bifida, they frequently also have hydrocephalus, which is too much fluid in the brain. And her brain produces too much spinal fluid, and it doesn't efficiently drain it. So they watched for a while after birth, at least they did for Isabella, to see if her body would kind of regulate that on its own or if she was going to need some surgical intervention. And about a week and a half after she was born, they decided it was time that she needed some help. So they put in a shunt in her head, which is it's a drain. There's a tube that goes through her skull into her brain, and then there's a drain on the outside of her skull between her skull and her skin, and then a long tube that goes down through her chest into her belly. So it takes all that extra spinal fluid and brings it down into her belly where it's just reabsorbed by the body. So she needed that when she was about a week and a half old. And that initially went very well. We got discharged from the NICU when she was 16 days old. And then a week later, her head was very swollen. The tubing was very swollen. They had told us initially some of that would be normal and it should regulate itself. But hers was really bad, so we called neuro.
The pictures.
Yeah,
the pictures are profound.
Yes,
and
we took her to the ER, and they said, yeah, she's definitely, it's failing. The drain isn't working for whatever reason. So they took her into surgery that night and replaced the whole thing.
How long of a surgery was that?
Those are pretty quick, an hour and a half.
Okay, you're talking like a pro here.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. It's a pretty quick.
The skull and the,
that's a pretty quick surgery.
Although I bet you at the time
it was very scary, and that was her first malfunction, and she was teeny. You know, we had just been out of the hospital for a week, and we thought, you know, life was going to get more normal now. We had our baby home. The other kids were so excited to have her at home, and that we were all home together. You know, they weren't going between grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles. Everyone was home. That surgery, so she just stayed overnight for that. We went home the next day. By that afternoon, it had happened again, and not only was she swollen this time, but that whole side of her face was droopy, and she was red down the whole tract of the shunts, through her chest, her belly, and then I noticed she was leaking fluid out of the incision in her skull. So I called, and we brought her to the ER again.
And this child now weighs about
6.5, 7 pounds.
Okay.
She was just a little baby. And so they didn't do the surgery right away that night. They kept her overnight, and then they decided the next morning that everything would have to come out. They would have to take the shunt, the tubing, everything out, because it was probably infected, and they would need to let everything heal before they could put it back in.
Okay.
So they went into that surgery, took everything out, and they were going to insert a PICC line so that she could get IV antibiotics, because they thought there was an infection, and she would have to stay in the hospital on these antibiotics while the infection's clearing. And since they took the shunt out, she was going to need an external drain, which went in the back of her skull. So that was another, you know, thing inserted into her skull and her brain that drained it out into a bag, just on an IV pole, so they can monitor how much is coming out, how it looks, you know, if the color is odd, if there's blood in it, anything, they can just watch it. But with that surgery, because they started antibiotics and did the PICC line, they gave her a paralytic drug, and she had a very rare reaction to it, where when they took her off of it, she remained paralyzed for a while. So they came and they told us, you know, it's going to be shocking because we have to put her on a ventilator because we're not sure if her lungs are going to work because she's paralyzed, and the effect will wear off in a couple hours, but she's going to need extra monitoring. So they put her back in the NICU, which they hardly ever do, because once a baby leaves the NICU, they're considered a dirty baby because they've been out in the world and they're getting everybody's germs and they don't want them back. But they put her back in the NICU because she was so little, and they wanted her to have that monitoring with the ventilator and just make sure that everything came back. And eventually it did. She was only in the NICU for a night, and then she was just up on the neuro floor for 10 days, and then she never grew anything in her culture, so they don't know if it was truly an infection or if some irritants got in there in the OR. But then after 10 days, they inserted a new shunt, and this time they put it on the other side of her head to kind of give her a fresh start. So that was nice, but then so we had this little baby with scars all over her head, because she had two like crescent-shaped scars from where the one shunt was, and then where the new one was, and then a scar in the back where the drain had been. So we got lots of funny looks if we took her out in public.
This beautiful child,
yes.
This beautiful child who, and again, this is a child who is under 7-8 pounds,
just teeny,
that has now had 3-4 surgeries.
She had 5 surgeries in her first month of life.
5 surgeries in her first month of life.
Yep.
And you have 5 other children at home. The oldest at that point is 9?
9, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So as a mom, you're divided in a whole lot of different directions, trying to explain to the little ones that this is okay. God has a plan.
Yes.
We know God has a plan, and this is okay.
Yes.
Your husband is still working.
The kids are in school.
Kids are in
school.
Lots of support from a wonderfully large family, good Catholic, solid family, but you've got to be exhausted.
Yeah.
Emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, spiritually wondering, okay, God, I've kind of had about enough.
Yeah. At that point, and neither one of us said it out loud, but we talked about it afterwards, Matt and I, that we were kind of wondering, like, what's going to happen? Is she going to make it? Are they going to find a solution that works for her body, or is she always going to have problems with the shunts and we're just going to be in and out of the hospital? And then if that's what our life is going to be, what about the other kids? How do we make this work for everybody? And so that was very tough. And I mostly stayed up at the hospital with Isabella. Matt would sometimes bring the kids up in the evening. The two youngest were at my parents' a lot. They would come visit. Matt would come and stay with her for a night so I could go home for a night and be with other kids. So it was just a lot of juggling, a lot of driving. I think I put thousands of miles on my car in that first month, just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
And Wisconsin winter in there and everything else. And it just, you had to have been at the edge. Standing and watching this from an outsider looking in at the time, I was amazed by your grace. I was amazed at your courage. You always had a smile on your face. Never heard a harsh word for any of your children. The amount of love that you poured on them. And to watch from the outside and see that God had wrapped your family in a protective bubble, He was asking a whole lot of you. Yeah. And it was clear that you were giving everything He was asking. And there was a ton of love there.
There was a ton of love. And one of my sister-in-laws, and I remember at her wedding, he sang to her, "You Are My Sunshine." And one night in the hospital, Isabella would not sleep, just crying in pain, uncomfortable. And the only thing that would settle her down was if I sang, "You Are My Sunshine." And I knew that my sister-in-law's dad was there, watching over Isabella and taking care of us while we were there. So there were just so many people praying for her and praying for us and helping with the kids and bringing meals. And it just really, if we hadn't had so much support and love and grace and God helping us, it wouldn't have happened the way it did. It would have been much, much harder.
Beautiful. So you have this beautiful baby who you love to bits, and she has gone through now 5 surgeries in her first few months. When did things begin? When did you begin to hit a new normal that you could exhale?
Probably after her first birthday, honestly. The first year was tough. She had, also with the spina bifida, she had clubbed feet.
Okay.
So she had to be in 6 weeks of casts, full leg casts. So about 2 weeks after we got out of the hospital the second time, she started that. And then after the 6 weeks of cast, and hers was actually stretched out to 7 or 8 just because of the way the timing worked at the hospital, then she had surgery to lengthen her Achilles tendons. And then she had to be in cast for 3 weeks after that. So she was in cast for a long time then, and then she got special braces that she had to wear all the time for that. So that was tricky too, trying to hold her and feed her and get her to sleep with these clunky casts and then the braces. And then she also had a lot of UTIs her first year too, so we were at the hospital for that, and then a lot of doctor visits for that. And then she had another shunt malfunction when she was 10 months old. And that was scary, not as bad as the first couple because it was just an in and out. She didn't have to stay. It wasn't an infection. It just had stopped working for whatever reason, and they just had to replace it. So after she turned 1 is when everything just kind of relaxed. And it was a huge relief to get her to that first birthday. It felt like a huge milestone, and her feet were doing better, and her surgery slowed down, and she was a happy kid.
That's fabulous. She is a happy kid. She really is.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked a little bit about your family and the support that you had from your family. How about other families that you've gotten to meet with Spina Bifida? How has that support system been of benefit to you?
We are so blessed that we have been introduced to a lot of families that have children with Spina Bifida or relatives with Spina Bifida. And at our parish, we know of 2 other families with kids with Spina Bifida. And so that's great that there's those 3 kids that I know of. There may be more at our church. And then just by word of mouth, someone will say, my friend has a friend who has a child with Spina Bifida. Can I give her your number? And I'll say, sure, why not? Because it's such a difficult journey to start out on, because nobody plans on anything like that. It's not what you picture when you have your baby. Nobody envisions going through all that. So it's been such a huge blessing, because then, if Isabella's having an off day, I can text or call one of my friends and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Do you think I need to be nervous? Do I need to be worried? Is it just a kid thing? Maybe she's got a cold. And so it's just been such a blessing. And all the kids I have met with Spina Bifida, and everyone will tell you, they're the happiest kids. Happiest kids. They always have a smile on their face. They're always excited to see people, just really, really genuinely happy kids.
She is full of joy, and it's an infectious joy when she's giggling, when she's got that smile, and sometimes even that naughty smile. When she has that smile, everybody around is also smiling. Yeah. I remember when you brought her to the Pro-Life Wisconsin dinner when she was very teeny, and she was the hit of the dinner. Everyone wanted to see this beautiful baby with just this angelic smile. Even when she was fussy, she was cute. Yeah. And just watching you and watching the love that your family has truly been incredible. Now, you guys have gone through so much. And the other families, you've been there for them when they've had their high points and their low points, too. Can you speak to that?
One of my who's become a very good friend, was introduced to me when she was pregnant. And it took them a while to get pregnant. They had some fertility problems. And so they finally got pregnant, and then they found out that their baby had Spina Bifida. And I just felt so blessed to be able to talk to her through the whole thing, from soon after finding this out, and then now we're good friends, and her daughter's 2 years old, and she plays with Isabella, and they're great friends. And just being able to feel like you're helping someone, and you can use your experiences to help somebody, and to hopefully help them to see God's plan in everything, because that's what it's about. It's God's plan, and God gives us these children for a reason. And maybe we don't understand why at first, but He gives them to us as blessings. She's the biggest blessing that we've ever been given. And it's just amazing. She's amazing.
She is. And watching and seeing that you get the big picture. You see that God has put her in your life and all of these other folks whose lives you touch. I'm so glad that you were willing to come on WCAT today and talk about this, because I think you're touching other lives too.
I hope so.
When you were in college, if someone would have told you are going to be given this child as a gift, would you have believed that she would be able to rise to the challenge?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was raised in a very good Catholic family, and so we were just taught to have the attitude that God will give you the grace to get through whatever He sends you. And my mom always said that God picks out babies from all of eternity and picks them just for you. And that's the baby he wants you to have. And so, yeah, I would have just said, yeah, we'll figure it out, we'll handle it, and God will help us, and that's what we've done.
And that's how you're raising your children. They see that too, and cherish that, and everyone else who sees it as well. Small school that they're in, small tight-knit community, you've been a witness to the love of Christ, God's plan, and that He will give you the graces to get through it. So we have this beautiful Isabella, who is, we've made it to her first birthday. What were some of the challenges that happened during that second year?
The second year, it was a lot slower in terms of medical issues, but she had some delays, and she had trouble eating. She didn't want to eat solid food. She didn't want to take a cup. And so that was hard because she kind of stopped growing for a while too, so then we had to go and see GI for failure to thrive. And even though she was a good size, they weren't concerned about her weight. They were concerned that she had stopped gaining weight. For when she got to be about 9 or 10 months, she just kind of stopped growing for a year. And it was okay because she has limited mobility. She had gotten to be kind of chunky. Okay. So it's not like she was teeny, but they were like, well, her weight is good, but she's not gaining weight, and we want her to keep growing. So that she had to do some feeding therapy for that, and she had some oral aversion, so she didn't like some of the textures of food, and she would hold food in her mouth. So that was very difficult because at this point, I was pregnant with our 7th child. And so I'm like, I'm going to have a new baby, and I have this other baby that I can't get to eat, Right. And so that was difficult. But when she was about 18 months old, then she started eating a little more. She's just very much on her own schedule. Okay. She does things when she's ready, when she wants to, very stubborn. So she got there on her own. It just took her longer. And then she had some regressions with her feet because she doesn't stand or walk.
Not weight-bearing?
Yeah, she's not weight-bearing. It's a lot. Her feet want to go back to being clubs. Sure. Because she doesn't have the strength in her legs to hold them where they're supposed to be. So she had to be recast a couple times. So that was hard just because they're big and clunky, and it's, going back to the hospital every week to get a new cast. Right. But she does really well with it. They don't bother her at all. She just takes everything in stride. And that year she had one shunt revision. But again, it was just, we took her to the ER, found out she needed it done within, 2 hours of being in the ER. She was back in the OR having it done. Wow. So as soon as they figure out what needs to be done, they move her real quick. Wow. And then again, it's, about an hour and a half surgery, and she was back on the neuro floor, and we were with her and able to hold her and everything. And then as soon as she's eating again the next morning, and as long as everything looks good, she gets to go home. Okay. So we were in the hospital less than 24 hours that time, so that was nice.
That just is amazing to me that, not that this should be routine, but
right.
that you've been able to cope to such a point where you know exactly what to expect. And it does sound like you have a good care team that help you as well.
Yes.
And as you say, you've got the other moms that God has put in your path that you are able to bounce things off of. Is this a real issue? Is this something I should worry about? Or is this, normal kid growing?
Yeah. Yep.
How has it affected your other children?
I think they're so much more compassionate. And I think they now see God everywhere because they see God in Isabella. And my oldest son once told me that Isabella is the greatest gift God has ever given our family. And he was, probably 10 when he said that. And so for a 10-year-old to see that is pretty impressive. And, sometimes my son right above her, it's hard for him because, he sees all the doctor's appointments and stuff as, well, she's getting all this attention. Sure. So sometimes it is hard to balance, making sure everybody gets what they need. But for the most part, it's become normal life with Isabella, just everything she needs. And our older daughter is able to help her get her braces on, and everybody knows, oh, no, she needs those braces now. She needs these ones at night. Everybody helps with her routine, and they all encourage her, and they fight over who gets to push her in her wheelchair. And they just, then when we're out in public and they notice other people who are different, if they see someone who's blind with their cane, they can, instead of just staring, and they still do stare because they're kids, but they have a better appreciation for God gives everybody crosses,
sure.
And everybody just has a different cross to bear. And that's just how they see Isabella, and that's how they see everybody.
That's beautiful. You mentioned wheelchair. What are some of her mobility issues, and over these 3 years, how have they manifest?
They always say with Spina Bifida that the hardest thing for parents is that it's all wait and see, because it's a snowflake disorder, and so everybody, even if their back was exposed in the same area, is affected a little different. Excuse me. So for her as a baby, she would never stand on your lap. When you'd stand them up to try and bounce them, she would never put weight in her legs and try and stand on your lap. She's always been in physical therapy and occupational therapy, so she's gotten both of those every week her whole life. And then she didn't roll over off her stomach until she was 10 months old. And then by a year, she was able to sit up. And so that was a big thing, that she could, finally sit up and play, and we didn't have to worry about her falling over and hitting her head. And
with
then,
the shunt.
Yes, yes, with the shunt. And then she started army crawling at about 18 months, and that was huge for her because that started giving her more than just being able to roll around the room. She had a little bit of mobility that she could get around. But we made her a wheelchair out of a Bumble baby seat and wheels when she was about 8 months old, because we figured it would take her a while to get used to how it worked.
Sure.
So it did. It took her about 6 to 8 months before she really had the hang of it. But she had it. She could sit and she could practice. And then, by the time she was 1.5 years, she was really good at zooming herself around in her little wheelchair. And so then she was starting to army crawl. She still army crawls a lot now. She can get up on her hands and knees to crawl, but she can't move her legs independently of each other. So she will move ahead with her hands, and then she just pulls her legs along with her. So she gets up off the ground to crawl, but it's not your typical 4-point hands and knees crawl that you think of babies doing. And she has very high bracing now that comes up to her chest. And with that and a walker, she's able to take some steps in therapy. So she does therapeutic walking. It's not something she does independently. She needs help pushing the walker along with her, but she's getting there, and she's starting to take steps, and she has her wheelchair now. We're in the process of ordering her very own. We have a loaned one right now, so she'll be getting her own wheelchair soon. She was very excited to pick out pink and purple colors on it. And now she asks for her wheelchair when she wants to go somewhere. And for me, that was huge, that she sees it as a tool to help her get around, sure, instead of a hindrance. And that she recognizes that it's a good thing for her to be in. Yeah. And so that made me really happy when she started asking for it to get around the house and get into different rooms and just keep up with everybody.
That is absolutely beautiful. How has your family had to cope with some of the folks from the outside who may not understand the beauty of the situation that you've been given?
Well, first of all, at the ultrasound, when we found out about her spina bifida, we were told there were 3 options. We could do the fetal surgery, we could do surgery after she was born, and then the way they phrased it was not everyone would choose to continue this pregnancy. And so we said, no, absolutely not. That's not something we even want to talk about. That's not an option for us. We want her. We love her. We're going to do whatever we need to do for her. And I'm very open to answering people's questions about her, because I think it's a big opportunity to teach people that it's okay to be different. It's okay to have a disability, and to show them God's love through Isabella. But the question that always kind of bugs me is when people ask, did you know she had spina bifida before she was born? Because, and one of the recovery nurses in the hospital after I had her asked me that. And when I said, I always smile and I say, yes, we knew she was going to be born with spina bifida. And she looked at me like just shocked, her jaw dropped, and she couldn't believe that we had her, even though we knew she was going to have spina bifida. And so when I get...
And you're looking at her like you can't believe that she could possibly ask this question and would not understand.
Right. So that for me is the hardest thing. But when someone asks that, I just try to smile and say yes, because my reaction is going to say a lot to them. I feel like if I'm happy about having Isabella, that's going to show them like, wow, that was a good thing that they had this baby. You know, if I'm, timid and shy and I don't want to say anything about it, they're going to say, wow, maybe it's a lot. Maybe people shouldn't keep their disabled kids, Right. And so how I react to people's questions, I think, is going to really impact how people walk away from Isabella feeling. If they feel she's loved and wanted, they're going to think, wow, that's a really good thing, to have these babies in the world.
Right. Oh, that has got to take a lot of courage and finesse in the moment, because I'm sure these happen when you're in the grocery store and you least expect the question or the look, and it's not like it's something that you can plan.
Right.
And so God gives you the grace in the moment to be able to answer those questions. And it is so beautiful that God puts those people in your path and you realize that they are there for a reason, that you are there, that encounter is something that He planned. That is very, very cool. How have the clergy dealt with Isabella and your family?
They have been just amazing from the beginning. I think I had mentioned before that when we were considering the fetal surgery, we went and talked to our priest.
Sure.
Because we wanted to make sure that it was okay to look into this. We absolutely didn't want to do anything that would intentionally harm Isabella. And it was such a risky surgery that we just wanted to go and speak with him and make sure that we weren't doing anything wrong.
Sure.
And he said, your intention through this is to do what's best for your child. So it's okay to go ahead and look into it, and we'll pray for you. And he gave me a special blessing. And so that was amazing. And then, he told us to baptize her after she was born. And then when she was in the hospital with the infection, he came up and he prayed with us and he blessed her. And so that was really, really great to have him come up and do that. And one of the priests from Holy Hill also came up when she was in the NICU and gave her a special blessing and talked with us.
Was it Father Cyril by any chance?
No? It was Father Michael Berry.
Oh, yes. Wow. Okay.
And he actually, so her middle name is Therese, after St. Therese. And so he brought a relic of hers, and then he told us about St. Elizabeth of the Trinity, who I had never heard of before, and she wasn't canonized yet. And that Elizabeth and Isabella are derivatives of each other.
Right.
And so then she kind of became one of her, adopted patron saints as well. And he had a relic of her as well. And he brought her blessed photographs of both St. Elizabeth and St. Therese. And I thought, wow, not everybody has photographs of both of their patron saints.
That's true.
So we got those framed and put them up in her room. And I just thought how cool that she has actual pictures of her saints. And they both were Carmelites. And so that's just very cool for her.
That is beautiful. So clergy, the way that clergy has been able to provide pastoral support has been very positive and very instrumental.
Yes.
And that's so important. Since we are Holy Apostles College and Seminary, and among our listeners are men in formation and their formators, priests, rectors, some bishops, what advice would you have for all of the above, for the men in formation, and for those who are training them, for those who are responsible for their formation?
I would just say, be pro-life and don't be afraid. If parents come to you and they've just gotten a diagnosis of whatever, a birth defect, a genetic condition for their child, just tell them, to have hope and that this baby will be a beautiful blessing for you. And people that I knew when I was pregnant with Isabella, people that weren't even Catholic or religious would tell me that. And that's what people need to hear. It's not going to be easy all the time.
Sure.
There's going to be challenges, but God chose this baby for you, and He chose you for this baby.
Right.
And it is a blessing to have been given a child that has more challenges than a typical child. And of course, you're scared, and you don't know what to do, and you don't know how you're going to handle it. But if you ask God for His grace, He's going to help you get there. So that would be my advice, is just always be pro-life. Always just spread the pro-life message.
Perfect. For the guys who are in formation right now, we've talked about prayer, we've talked about praying with families, we've talked about getting comfortable with families. Mm-hmm. Any advice on when they're coming to visit you, how to begin the conversation? Can you think of anything?
Well, it's always good to start with a prayer.
Okay, that's something I've heard from other folks too, is that prayer, you need the spiritual support to begin with, but that prayer also breaks the ice.
Yes, definitely.
And
smile.
To not be afraid of saying the wrong thing necessarily.
Right. No.
Just your presence there means the world to this family.
Yes.
You were not looking to the clergy for answers. I think often what I've heard from clergy is that they're afraid of, especially the young ones, they're afraid of the question, why me? Because they don't have the answer to that.
Yeah.
And that's the big elephant in the room. It's not the question that was on your mind at all.
No.
You wanted the support, you wanted the prayer, and you wanted to know that you were doing the right thing.
You wanted to make sure you were on the right track.
Exactly. And they can provide that. And for the guys who are in formation right now, and for those who are not encountering families with special needs children right now, their prayers are still tremendously important.
Yes.
As you're laying there in bed and trying to figure out what you should pray for these special needs families. Pray that this mom who's got 5 other children will have the grace to get up and get the breakfast made and not lose her cool.
Right.
And get everybody where they have to be and just continue with another day and keep it all together.
Yeah.
Because without those guardian angels working overtime, none of that would be happening.
No.
Beautifully said. We are getting close, I think, to the end of our time here, but it has been a joy to have you here with me.
Yes, thank you
and for you to share Isabella's story, your family's story. You've been so very open, and I know that your story will touch other lives.
I hope so.
You did this. With God's help, you were able to do this, walking this journey for these 3 years so far and a whole lot more years to go. And if you were able to do it, it means other people can do it too. As daunting as it can be, taking one step at a time, one day at a time, with your hand in God's hand, and Our Lady's mantle wrapped around your shoulder. I imagine that there are many times that you've been in her room and you've got a rosary in your hand, and that's getting you through?
Yes. And many times that everything is just so much that there have been many times where I can't even remember my prayers. And I'm a creative Catholic. I know my prayers, but there's just so much going on in your mind and so much worry and so much fear. And then I just think, you know what? Then I'm just going to be with Jesus.
That's it.
Because if I don't have the words, He knows what's in my heart. And that's a prayer too. So then you just hold your rosary beads and you're just there.
That's beautifully said, and that is a great piece of advice. It is. I have a friend who is now deceased, my good friend Father John Grennan, and when I would come to him with kids who were having issues, overtired, exhausted, at the end of my rope, and saying, I didn't get to this prayer. I didn't get to my daily office. I'm a secular Carmelite, and I didn't finish. I fell asleep with my rosary in my hand, and I didn't get any of this done. And he would say, God wants you to pray as you can, not as you wish. And that offering up what you were not able to do and relying on him, put your head on his heart and just rely on him, is itself a prayer. And that piece of his advice was huge because it took the anxiety and the worry away that maybe I wasn't meeting what I needed to meet. And then I could just rest in the arms of the Savior and know that his love was there and enough for me and enough for this child, for these children. And tomorrow would be another day and we would keep going. All of that is so important. Well, as we are getting to the end here, this again is WCAT Radio, and I am Dr. Anne Urlakis, and I have been blessed to be here with Mrs. Abby Zignego talking about her beautiful daughter Isabella and the issue of Spina Bifida. And before we sign off, I would like to ask Abby if she would be kind enough to join me in a Hail Mary.
Yes.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Thank you once again for listening, and for all of those out there who are listening to this WCAT program, be assured of our prayers for you as well.
Hi there, this is Christine Mooney Flynn, host of the Catholic Mama podcast, and I'd like to invite you to join me over on the Catholic Mama. To develop a Christian family and raise children who are, and who, God willing, will continue to be confident Catholics, requires us as parents to be confident in our faith as well. So each week, I dive into topics that help to make sense of the Catholic faith and how to live out that faith in our vocation as husbands and wives, moms and dads. So whether you need help in explaining aspects of Catholic doctrine like the real presence in the Eucharist, or if you're looking for practical ideas on how to live a more Catholic life, my goal is that you'll find the answers and guidance you're looking for over on my show, The Catholic Mama. I hope to see you there.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.